Welcome to the video presentation using dimensions in HTML tables. I will continue to use Notepad to create our HTML code, and we'll use Internet Explorer to view the code. I'm going to start by taking our file that we had worked on previously, trees.html, and dragging it into the Notepad area. And this should look familiar to you. This is the code we were working on in the previous session. I'm also going to drag a copy of that into Internet Explorer to remind you how the table looked when we left off last time. You'll notice that we have a row for the tree names, the size of the trees, and the prices, and then we have separate columns for each individual tree, for the oak, the pine, cherry, and willow tree. Now, you may also notice that the size of the table seems to have been automatically created to just perfectly match the size of the data. The table is the same size as the data. So there's an auto sizing function that happens with tables. And why that may be a nice added feature if you neglect to add a size to a table. You may find that the auto sizing doesn't really fit what you're trying to do. Let me go ahead and talk about the easiest ways to resize a table. Now, as we mentioned in the previous session, a lot of the things we do with tables can be done with cascading style sheets. And we'll want to get into that in the future. But for now, our main objective is to look over the table tags and understand how they're used. I'm going to go down to the section where we actually specify the start of the table, the standalone table tag. Remember that we have a border of 3, and I'm going to add width. Within the width attribute, I can describe it one of two ways. I can either give an absolute width, saying it's going to be this wide, or I can give it a percentage width that will specify it as taking up a certain percentage of the available space. For now, I'm going to put an absolute width in here, in pixels. I'm going to say that my table size for this table should be 800 wide. And this will be 800 pixels wide. Let's take another look at exactly how our table looks now. I'm going to save the file, and then I'm going to drag it on and see what happens. You can see how it looks before I made that change specifying the width. And now I'm going to drag the file onto the Internet Explorer to see how it looks now. You'll notice that it's taking up much more space. In fact, since it was an absolute width, it's actually taking up more than the available space. That's why on the bottom of the screen for Internet Explorer, there's actually a scroll bar that allows you to see the full table. It's taking up more space than is available. Let's say we want to take up whatever space is available on the screen. Instead of putting an absolute number in, we'll put a percentage. In this case, we'll say 100%. We want the table to be 100% of the available width. I'll save this document. We'll again look at the table as it now stands, and then we'll update it by moving the file onto your Internet Explorer screen. As you can see, the table now covers the width of the available space. Let's say you want it to be a percentage, but you don't want it to take up the full width that's available. You could change it to 70%. I'll save the document, go to Internet Explorer. You can see how it looks now, and now let's update it by moving the file onto the Internet Explorer screen. And you can see it's reduced down in size. We'll try one more example here, an absolute width. Now you'll have to decide which one works best for you. And in individual situations, it will vary. If you put an absolute width, you have a little more control, as long as you're relatively sure that whatever absolute width you're going to be putting in for the attribute is actually available on the screen. This time, I'm going to set the absolute width to 660 pixels. I'll save the document. We'll look at the file as it now stands, and we'll pull the new file onto the screen. You see it's expanded out a little bit. Now, no matter how I resize my browser, the size of the table remains the same because it's specified as an absolute dimension, not in relation to the overall available space. To illustrate that, I'm going to go back one more time and change the width to a percentage. We're going to go back to 70%. Now you'll notice this time when I resize my screen, the table also resizes, always staying at 70% of the available space.